YouTube, what's going on, man? It's Father Dark. I'm up bright and early on Sunday morning. We're a couple of days into the mid-season update, so you guys can go ahead and let me know in the comments on top of everything else how you feel about that, how you're liking the new characters, the updates to different characters, buffs, nerfs, reworks, all that kind of jazz. But I'm going to go ahead and get into a topic that I saw on Twitter the other day that I kind of thought was a little bit interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of talk about it, give my 2 cents in it like I usually do with everything else. I'm going to leave some gameplay up in the background that are kind of different situations. There's a few other videos that you can go to kind of reference that I'll talk about while I'm talking that I've put up. I'm not going to put the gameplay in for that just because I've already uploaded those videos. Don't want to re-upload old content. So, but yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. So, saw the topic. Was it, do people think that role queue is needed? I mean, the exact question that was presented was, do you need 2-2-2, which basically just is role queue, meaning that, 2 healers, 2 DPS, 2 tanks. And what I think is interesting about that is that if you've played Overwatch before, or now the thing is that Overwatch is the only hero shooter that I've ever played prior to Marvel Rivals. I'm usually an FPS guy. This channel was built off of Call of Duty, so hero shooters wasn't really my thing. But I've really gotten into Marvel Rivals, especially since Call of Duty is just kind of letting hackers run rampant right now and doing their own thing. So taking a massive break and focused on Marvel Rivals. Nonetheless, though, the point that I'm making is that if you've played another hero shooter where they have role queue, with me, that was Overwatch. And if that was like your initial experience, because like I said, with me not knowing about other hero shooters, I don't know besides Overwatch if that's like a thing. But with that being my primary, introduction into hero shooters, or only introduction to hero shooters, and the only game I play like that was something that was kind of like hard grained into my mind. So when I first started playing Marvel Rivals, I would assume that it was going to be an L if we didn't have a certain type of composition, which was, obviously the 2 healers, 2 DPS, and the 2 tanks. So, with that, I think that it's really interesting simply because I think that among other things, there are some other aspects of, Marvel Rivals that I feel like they do a lot better than Overwatch, in my opinion. Because like I said, I didn't think that I would like Rivals when I first started playing it. I solely played it because I have a lot of friends where that's all they play is like hero shooters. They pretty much, only played as far as like competitive games, Overwatch prior. So, it's nice every now and again to be able to like agree with your friends on something. Like I'm not going to get them to be able to play Call of Duty. So, I jumped into it and, I just started to naturally and organically really enjoy the gameplay. And, I think one of the main things for me was kind of the fact that it didn't feel as like slow and clunky as Overwatch felt. Now I know there are certain characters like Lucio, for example. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. It's been a while since I played the game, but there are certain characters that do kind of like move a little bit faster than other characters. But for the most part, like any of the characters that I did play, they just felt very slow, very clunky. All that kind of jazz. Nonetheless, in Rivals, it just feels a lot more fast paced sometimes for me personally. But to get back to the point, kind of digressing a little bit, like I said, when I first got into Rivals, it did feel like if you didn't have a certain team composition, it just wasn't going to be a good game, right? And it wasn't until I started playing ranked that, it started to kind of change my mindset. And, just to give you an example, I had uploaded a previous video that you can go back to and reference called Don't Do This in Marvel Rivals, or at least that's what the thumbnail said. I think the actual title was something like Why You Should Never Give Up in Ranked. And when I did play Overwatch, I usually played as a flex character. I mean, or not a character, but played a flex. Meaning that I would basically play whatever whatever role wasn't being filled at the time, right? And a lot of times I feel like that's healers. I feel like a lot of people naturally don't want to have to be the healer. They kind of want to just be able to attack and then blame healers when things don't go their way. I think that's just kind of like the natural way that things work in regards to that. Nonetheless, though, I've done I did the same thing when I first started playing Rivals, just because I don't like to sit around and complain about what's not happening or whatever the case is. The mindset that I have when it comes to life in general is to create solutions versus problems, because I don't really believe in problems. I think that problems are just it's kind of it's just kind of like a placeholder until we find a situation, right? Like that's just really what it is. It's like there's really not problems. They're just kind of there until we find a solution and there's no longer a problem, right? So instead of sitting back and complaining and saying, oh, well, the healers didn't do enough healing, or the DPS didn't do enough DPSing, or the tanks didn't do enough tanking, right? I'd rather just fill that role and, if the blame is on myself, then it's on myself, right? And then I can learn from those mistakes and do better the next time, and ultimately just become better with every engagement that I take, right? Use those as lessons. So, like I said in that video that I was just referencing, it started out and it was a rank match, and we had one tank, two DPS, two healers, right? So I went ahead and I went as Penny. Because Penny, for the, one, we were on defend, and two, Penny is one of my favorite tanks and the one that I know the best, right? So we were just getting pushed really hard. I think they had like a Thor and someone else on their team in regards to tanks, and they were just being extremely aggressive. It was like a Thor and a Hulk or something like that. I don't know. Nonetheless, the point that I'm making is that while they were pushing really hard. Sorry, I had to stop the recording for a moment and go check on my dog. But nonetheless, though, the point that I was making is that they were pushing, really hard, and Penny just was not working. Even though I had all the mines down, was webbing them up and stuff like that, my team just wasn't, really doing enough damage, and the healers weren't healing enough to where, we were able to stop them. Like the rest of the team was just sitting back, taking pop shots while the tanks were, just being hyper aggressive and diving the hell out of us, which, that's what they should be doing. So I actually switched off of Penny and switched over to Squirrel Girl. Squirrel Girl, in my opinion, is one of the best counters to like tanks. She just seems like she does a lot of damage to tanks, and I think once they start getting that much damage done to them quickly when they weren't prior, they immediately kind of back off. Now, I know there's other characters. A lot of people be like, oh, well, Bucky's really good for tanks, et cetera, et cetera. But Squirrel Girl is just, it's kind of ridiculous. She can just kind of hold these angles down and, just keep lobbing squirrels down like, these lanes and stuff, especially on the more narrow maps. And the fact that they bounce off of walls, and a lot of times you'll just end up getting eliminations from people that are kind of like standing back there behind the tanks and stuff like that. So there's numerous reasons why I like Squirrel Girl. But like I said, I switched over to her. And as soon as I switched, somebody in the chat was immediately like, "What are you doing? We need another tank." And a couple other people followed in with them, like, "What are you doing? You should stay with Penny." And my mindset is that Penny wasn't working, right? So even though that's kind of like what's ingrained in our minds is that we're supposed to have a certain type of composition on teams in the setup. Sometimes you can mix things up and you actually get the desired result. We ended up winning the match. And like I said, we went from basically the first 2/3 of the match just getting ran through. I think you could count on one hand how many eliminations everyone had on the team. The second that I switched to Squirrel Girl, it was like the tanks started easily going down. And once those tanks started going down, it kind of threw off the other team because they just, once people get into a certain flow and then things change, because people a lot of times will get comfortable mentally once they've started, after over half the match has been in their favor and it's been no problem for them. And once the tide changes, a lot of people don't do well with adjusting in the moment. They kind of know the character that they know. They're like one tricks, or they're just too stubborn to change. And they think, well, maybe if I just keep, running into this wall over and over again, something will change, right? And that's actually the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting there to be a different result. Whereas with myself, once I've done the same thing a couple of times and it doesn't work, then I'm going to instantly try something different. I know a lot of people might think, why didn't you try a different tank? And the thing is that the tanks were the problem. They were the ones that were doing the most damage and the ones that were really just kind of running that match, right? So my mindset was to switch to something that counters tanks and, see what happens. And come to find out, it actually worked out a lot better for us. I've had matches where we've ran all different types of compositions. Me and my friends, a lot of times we'll just try out random stuff. And, this was months ago when the game first, was a lot newer, not when it first came out, but like within its first like month or two of coming out. We would just run like all healers. I have a match that I have probably playing right now. I don't know exactly because I'm recording the voiceover, and then I'll just put the gameplays in the background to just fill up the space. But there should be a match playing right now where I came into it late and we actually ended up winning. And when I came in, there was all DPS. It was like one tank. I think it was the Thing, and then the rest of them were DPS, and I was the only healer. And at first I tried Loki just because, I already have Cloak and Dagger, on Lord. So I was like, let me try to go ahead and get another healer Lord. I have a lot of the healers right there where they're about to be Lord. So I was like, let me just try someone else. But it wasn't working. They're using like Iron Fist, Captain America, and stuff like that. And for it to be the only healer, it just wasn't really the thing. And so, because I'm competitive and I don't like losing, even if it's just quick play and I'm just messing around, I was like, you know what, last minute, let me go ahead and switch to Cloak and Dagger, and immediately just ran through the whole entire team, even with there just being one healer, right? Whereas the old me would have been like, no, we need two healers. There's no way. And I kind of would have mentally assumed that we were going to lose just because, like I said, once you kind of get it in your head that hero shooters work a certain way and there has to be a certain, composition and dynamic with the teams, that's just what's gonna, once you get in your own head, that's kind of like the end right there. But because I know Cloak and Dagger so well, I've mained them for a long time, and been through so much with them, so many different situations. I could play Cloak and Dagger upside down and blindfolded, not even facing the monitor while I'm being spun around, right? So, what I'm saying? Like, once you know a character that well, it's going to change things completely. And, like I said, there's been a lot of times where we've done so many different things, right? Played matches as all healers, winning as all DPS, all tanks, whatever, right? And every type of mix up and match up in between, and still been able to have a favorable outcome, right? So no, short, I don't think that you need there to be role cues, simply because one, it comes down to like the players. Let me give you an example, right? Let's say you have two healers on a team, and then you have one healer on another team. Let's say the one healer is just, that's what they do. That's all they do. They're really, really good at healing, and they can do damage as well, right? And then you have two healers who aren't really doing much healing, and they're not doing much damage. Let's say their stats are like they got 4 and 5 eliminations apiece, and they only have 5-6K healing, whereas then you might have another healer on the other team. It's just one healer, but they have 25K healing and they have 18 eliminations, right? Which is kind of like an average ranked match for me, somewhere around like 18 to 25 eliminations, a bunch of assists, and like anywhere from like 20 to 30K healing is kind of like an average for me. 20K is kind of low, but it's more like 25 to 30K healing, right? Which one was more relevant? You could have 3 healers, and if they all don't amount to the same amount of healing and eliminations as the one healer, what was the point, right? So there's a lot of different factors and variables and stuff when it comes to team composition and what's needed and what's not needed. I would rather have one tank instead of 2 tanks if the one tank is a really good tank and the other person who I wanted to play tank is actually a far better DPS. Let's say they know Bucky really well and that's what they play best as. I would much rather have you be playing Bucky if that's who you understand better than to say, hey, jump on Thor knowing that you have no idea how to play Thor, right? Just for the sake of playing Thor. To say jump on Venom knowing that you can't do anything with Venom and you just immediately get deleted with him, right? And the other thing that's really interesting about this game that completely changes the dynamic when you try to compare it to something like Overwatch is team up abilities. So I was just looking it up because I didn't remember, Overwatch having any team up abilities. And if they weren't as pertinent like as they are in this game where, people are actively asking for team ups and they have them on the screen where you can see all the different team ups for each character and stuff like that. But when I Googled it, I didn't see anything about team ups in Overwatch. So if I'm wrong about that, let me know in the comments though. But at least in this game though, you do have team ups. And team ups can like completely change, if you have just a Punisher in your team, yeah, Punisher can be really good. He can do lots of things by himself. But when you have a Punisher and a Rocket, it just kind of gets ridiculous, especially if that Rocket fully understands to use his team up ability with you regularly instead of it, because it's not like it's a passive team ability. It's something that he has to actively use, right? But even if it's not Rocket and Punisher, you could say Luna and Namor or something like that, right? Those kind of things completely change the dynamic of the game, right? To where certain things are no longer needed, right? Like you may not need a tank anymore. You may not need like multiple healers or something if the DPS is just DPSing so much. the other team there's no need. There's been plenty of games like where as a healer, I haven't even had to heal that much because the enemy team for some reason just was not landing shots on my teammates. So I might have only had 5 or 6K, healing in comparison to like my normal 2025, because the enemy team just was not like we hadn't spawn trapped and they just weren't doing anything. So there was nothing to really heal, or my teammates were just really smart and stayed near health packs and used those whenever they took damage. So like I said, there's so many different variables, and like you really have to take the time while you're, in the actual match to read the room, right? Really pay attention to the board, pay attention to who's doing what, even if you are healing, to say like, okay, well, instead of spending all my time healing this tank that has 3 eliminations, and he's just sitting here just spamming, his right click or, right trigger or whatever it is, let me focus on this one DPS that's actually, he's got 18 eliminations right now, right? He's doing, the Lord's work out there. So like I said, man, there's just, a ridiculous amount of variables and stuff that go into this game and, hero shooters in general. But I do not think that anytime soon that they need to add role queue in. Sometimes there are times where you kind of wish that they would, because you get those random teammates that, everybody wants to go DPS or something. And, you do have like, for example, if you're in ranked, and you're at a high level of rank, right? And you're playing against, that your teammate, not teammates, but the enemy are, just as aware of how to play the game as you are and just as skilled, then yeah, you do need a little bit more balance. But there are exceptions to everything, just like I referenced earlier, with me switching to Squirrel Girl. That's not the first time. There's actually another video that I uploaded that maybe I wasn't necessarily talking about it, but the gameplay was there just because, a lot of times when I'm just ranting, I'll put whatever the most recent gameplay that I have recorded is in there just to kind of fill up that visual void that's there. And like I said, there's been numerous times where that's happened, where I've been playing a tank. There was another tank. We had 2 DPS, 2 healers, and it just was not going the way we needed it to. Immediately switch over to Squirrel Girl if the tanks are what's giving us a problem. There's also been times where I was a tank and the 2 healers I felt like were just not doing enough. So I switched over to Cloak and Dagger or something to heal and kind of get eliminations and stuff, and kind of like buff the damage for other teammates when you blind people as Cloak. So that, and it's not just those characters. It's just I'm naming characters that I feel the most comfortable with and understand the best for those like particular situations. A lot of times that are more recent to memory. But like I said, there's numerous other times where I've maybe switched characters 3 or 4 times until I found that one that was a good counter for whatever, seemed to be the biggest issue on the enemy team. Right. So, like I said, that's my personal opinion. There may be people who feel differently, but I'm just giving you like my experiences. And I do think that with the way, like how well this game was designed as far as all the different characters and different abilities that they have, I do think that it is kind of like one of the better aspects is that it is left up to you. Now, sometimes it works against you and sometimes it's just kind of whatever. And sometimes it's, oh man, that was a really cool battle based off of, the different, composition that we had on our team and stuff like that. But like I said, though, you guys feel free to let me know in the comments. This isn't a echo chamber, so if you disagree, there's nothing wrong with that. I love to hear you guys' thoughts and opinions and how you feel about stuff like this. If you do agree, obviously leave a comment as well. If you just kind of feel impartial about it, you don't really care, also leave that in the comment. Let me know. But I did think that it was an interesting topic, and I did think that it was something that should be discussed. But that's it, though. That's all I have to add to that. But like I said, just let me know in the comments what you guys think, how you're feeling about the new season. I'm personally loving it so far. I've been having a great time. Love the new characters. But this is Father Dark, and I'm out. I'll catch you guys in the next one.